Today we have a really important topic. We're talking about communication, how to communicate during divorce without letting your emotions take over. And so divorce communication can feel like a battlefield. What if you could stay calm, clear, and unshakable no matter how your ex behaves? In this episode, we're going to reveal how you can take your power back in every conversation. And guest expert with me today is Deborah Donenfeld, and she's a midlife coach who helps people navigate big life changes with clarity, confidence, and grace. You can read all about the episode and Deborah's background in the show notes. But I'm going to jump right in. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and Deborah and I just realized that we're neighbors. We live about a mile away from each other, which was shocking because we're both in Rockaway Beach, New York, with just such an itty bitty little community to begin with.
And nobody lives here.
I asked her, where do you live? And she's like, Rockaway. And I'm like, New York, Rockaway? As you guys know, I start every episode with a question just to bring a little of the humanness and interest of my guest. And so today the question is, Deborah, if we peeked into your fridge or nightstand right away, right now, what would surprise us?
Well, I can tell you what's in my fridge that might feel a little surprising. It's lots of pickled things. I have pickled turnips that I made, jars and jars of pickled turnips. I have pickled tomatillos that somebody else made that I have. I have regular dill pickles. I have sauerkraut, two different kinds. So yes, lots of pickles.
That is so funny. I go to the wholesale market on 99th Street, and there's a guy who pickles everything, and I have like no pickled stuff. And every time he's like, "You want to try it?" And I'm like, "I'm not a pickled person."
That's where my pickled tomatillos came from.
And he's very good.
Yes.
But folks, enough about pickles. Thank you very much. We're going to dive into this question. And I'm going to say it's not only your ex, right? So I run a group that we met yesterday, and sometimes it's your adult child, your snarky teen. And Deborah, as we know, everyone going through divorce, there's so much stress and tension and uncertainty. I think we all live with a certain level of cortisol overflow during that period of time, which for
Absolutely.
me, 3.5 years. So that's a lot of cortisol.
Yeah.
And so we get dysregulated. And yet there are so many small and big, important conversations to have. Let's kick off. How does one who knows you're triggered, you're reactive, you're in fear, you're stressed out, how does one even begin to get on top of that so that they can communicate more clearly?
I think that the first thing is you have to want it. You have to decide that you don't want to just offload your anger and your hurt and your resentment and anything else that's coming up onto your spouse or anybody else. You have to decide, and I imagine anybody who's listening to this with the topic that it is has decided that they want to have good, effective communication. But you do have to get to that place of.
So I want to ask you about that, though.
Mhm.
Before we say, so for the person who's listening, who's going, why me? He cheated on me. She spent all my money. They're the ones who caused this. They're the ones who asked for this. Like, why should I even try and control myself?
Well, I think the answer is in the question. And I think it's very interesting that linguistically we often ask that question. Why is this happening? Why should I do it? We're not actually asking a question. What we're saying is, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't like it. I don't like that this is happening. I don't like that I have to. I don't like that this is the expectation. I don't want to do it. So if we can sort of turn it around and actually ask that question with curiosity, like, why should I do this?
What's the value?
Then what's the value? What am I trying to get out of this? Then you actually may come up with the answer for yourself. I don't have an answer for everybody, but certainly if you want to have good communication and you have some goals that you want to achieve, then that's the reason for wanting to talk about it in a calm, collected way. And I don't want to say be the bigger person, but be the person who is less controlled by your emotions. Because if you're both controlled by your emotions, like, you're not really going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that conversation isn't going anywhere. So this
Right.
morning I was reading, I'm doing the big leap year. Today's day 205. I'm very proud. And it talked about projecting, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
so typical
Mm-hmm.
in this stage of life, right? Where it's like the you. So I'm hurt, you're hurt, and we're just tossing emotional grenades at each other in this projection of.
Right.
So if I want to, and I know I've been a little bit of a hot mess, not terribly effective in what the goals that I'm trying to get to, my communication isn't helping. Where do we
Mm-hmm.
begin?
I think the beginning, well, maybe I should take a step back. The beginning for that is you can acknowledge it. I know I haven't been the best communicator. I really want to try to do better so that we can calmly talk about the things that we need to talk about. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that you've been emotional
Mm.
and that maybe you haven't communicated the way you want to. But I think even before that, you need to have a strategy. You need to ask yourself that question of why for real. What is the outcome I'm looking for? Why am I having this conversation? What is the outcome I'm going for? What am I hoping to accomplish? That is the thing to keep in mind. And I know it sounds very calculated, but sometimes it has to be. And it is the way to have a more civil exchange, is to know where you're going and what you're hoping for.
I think that makes so much sense because when we're in the living room and something happens and somebody's triggered and the fighting is beginning, or if it's co-parenting after divorce and there's a drop off, if you're not thinking about what are my desires and how do I move closer to them versus further away, right? Without thinking about that, you just have this knee jerk. You said what? You did what? I'm going to say, right? And
Right.
you're kind of off to the races without almost a destination in mind, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, I think that that's true. It's like you're off gassing. That's the whole point of being there, is to allow yourself an outlet for your emotions. And this person has become a
The
target.
dumping ground.
Yeah, a dumping ground. But also, I think going back to what you were saying about how we're we're projecting and we're filled with cortisol and it's going on for a long time. I wonder how much of it becomes habit. When I'm with this person, this is how I speak. When I'm with this person, it's my opportunity to offload all my emotions. So some of it is maybe truly what we're feeling, and some of it may be habit.
Yeah.
So how can you separate the two and say, you know what, I want to create a new habit?
I read a book, Susan Scott, Fierce Conversations, many years ago, and she said, when you have something to say, but you're so filled with emotion and she calls it dumping your emotional load,
Mm,
there's a message in there that nobody is ever receiving because they're
hmm.
receiving this wave of emotional snarkiness, anger, pain, whatever it is. And so in her book, she was saying you have to separate your message from the emotional load. Otherwise, nobody's
Right,
hearing what you're saying. They're only
right.
hearing how you're feeling.
That's right. And it goes back to step one and step two. Do you want it? Or do you just want to offload your emotions? Is that the point of this conversation? Because if that's the point of your conversation, knock yourself out and know what it's going to lead to.
Right.
I'm not advocating that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then have the strategy, understand what the strategy is, and give some time to yourself. Like, oh, this is really hard. This is really, I do have a lot of emotions and I am going through a lot. Can I give myself the compassion for everything I'm going through? I'm not going to get it from this person. I'm not going to get
Mm,
compassion from this person. Not
right.
now, and not if I'm speaking in this way.
Right. Right. And so if we are committed to speak so that we're moving in the direction of our desire,
Hmm.
where do you begin?
I think that number one, take a breath. If you need to give yourself some space between what they're saying and what you want to say. Give yourself the space, and that could be a breath. That can be a phrase that you have written on a note card that you will always know to pick up the note card and read because you're too out of sorts to be able to remember what to say. That will buy you some time, which is, I really need to think about that. I notice I'm having a really strong reaction to that, and I don't want to bring that into this conversation. Let me just take a step back and have a breath, or can we talk about this a little bit later? Let me think about that? And it could be any number of things.
100%.
Buy yourself some space and then stay with yourself, right? It's so easy to just what you were saying earlier. You did this and you did that and you said this. Stay with I. Talk about yourself. It's hard to argue with I'm really feeling scared, or when you said that, I really felt hurt. That does not normally an argument starter.
Yeah.
You said this terrible thing is an argument starter, right?
Yes, rather than the stay away from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you say two things. One is that pause, that beat that you take, that space that you give yourself can be only a couple of seconds or a minute and can make all the difference. In 12-step programs, they say if you're upset, count to 10. If you're really upset, count to 100.
Yeah,
And it's
very good.
that concept of that beat. And I think it was Eckhart Tolle who said, he talks about the pain body, right? So someone does something, you feel it, you feel your heat rising. He
That's right.
says it takes 90 seconds for the pain body to wave up and simmer back down. And the damage we do when we don't allow for those 90 seconds, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And when we don't allow for it to wave up and wave down, because I think the thing that maybe he says it in some other time, but if you're pushing it down the whole time, it's actually going to take longer, and it's going to act in the background in ways that maybe you understand or don't understand. So yeah, allow it to happen.
And I think so often I have a boundary boot camp, and boundaries are not hard to set. It's all the belief systems underneath that keep you tethered to doing it in a healthy way. And what you're saying, it's like, if you find yourself, if you're listening, you find yourself like shutting that stuff down, you may have been raised with, good girls don't get angry, or it's not good to show emotions or whatever. And so in that beat, that also ability to even before you keep it in the eye with your voice, what I thought you were going to start with is tune in, right? As opposed to you did A, B, and C. It's like, I'm triggered. Oh my God.
That's right.
From 0 to 100 in a hot second. What's going on with me?
Right. And that's the step between the take a breath, take a pause, and start with I statements. It's very hard to know what the I statements are if you don't actually tune in and know what you're feeling. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
slowing the conversation down. And can we talk about all of these are so simple and basic, but what makes them so complicated is our upbringing and our belief system and our unconscious thoughts. And so let's talk a little bit about what's going on under the covers during that early stages of a conversation that could turn into just a big argument.
Right. Well, anything that triggers you in a big way is probably very old. Right. So if you have done a lot of therapy and you've done a lot of work, then you may be able to identify, oh, right, this is how my father used to speak to me, or I was disregarded as a child and now I'm feeling disregarded. It's not even necessarily so much about this person in front of me who's disregarding me. This is reminding me of my whole upbringing. And so now you've got a conversation that is loaded. We're not just talking about what we're talking about. We're talking about my whole history and my whole childhood and everything that, I didn't feel seen as a child, and now I'm not feeling seen in this moment. Well, that's now huge. It's not
100%. Yeah. It's so
right.
funny. I've spoken to a couple of clients who were all the youngest. And so it's like I was the youngest. Nobody saw me, nobody heard me. I did
Yeah.
I had to.
There were no pictures of me.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And I love throwing in the 12-step thing. In the 12-step program, they say, I love this saying, when it's hysterical, it's historical.
Yeah, that's right.
And
It's a good one.
that's just such a quick way to remember. So I know when I go from 0 to 100, whoever is standing in front of me and whatever happened that got me there, they play a very small role in it. And the last
That's
60
right.
years of my life play a much bigger role in it, all
That's
the way
right.
back down to my childhood. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's like somewhere in us, we sort of believe it or believe that that's what we deserve, or we have so much hurt from it. If we didn't, if it was just this one person in our life who was doing this and it hadn't happened before, we might not like it, but it wouldn't be so big.
Yeah, yeah. And that just brings us to, I tend to go down a few rabbit holes, Deborah, so bear with me. But
Great.
but the piece of you made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
I love talking about that because I was just writing about it this morning. You and I are going to feel completely different if somebody's standing in front of us and, let's say, having a bad day and yelling at both of us. And
Right.
you might come from a nice, healthy household and you're thinking, wow, that person's having a really bad day. And I'm like devastated, or I'm yelling back, or I'm hiding in the closet because of my upbringing. And I think this is such an important piece to touch on, that when you feel a way, while the person's behavior triggered the feeling, they didn't make you feel.
They didn't make you
You
feel.
feel based on
Mm-hmm.
your life experience, and especially your family of origin and your childhood, right?
That's right. My therapist always says if you feel something, it's because that feeling is in you. It's just coming out. So nobody made you feel anything. If that feeling wasn't already in there,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be triggered right now.
Yeah.
It's in you. You could actually, if you wanted to go that route, you could say, thank you for allowing me to see this feeling that's inside me. But that's very hard to do.
I can hear the listeners right now.
Right.
They're like, I'm
Yeah.
not
That
thanking
you
them.
can hear the listeners rolling their eyes collectively.
But it's an interesting thing, because the person who's baiting you is, if you could step back enough, the person that baits us is also the one who's shining a light on the thing that needs to be healed.
Well, right, exactly.
And so I would think that, like, in the moment, you're taking a beat, you're giving yourself that pause. But the gift, and my favorite saying is, every upset is a setup for personal growth. The gift is, thank you. You've just delivered to me a message that I have a piece of healing that I was not aware I needed to work on. And I'm just going to say to you, the listener, I know what you're thinking. He or she is difficult, and they do say mean things, and it is hurtful. But the minute that we give them all of the power, we're disempowered, as opposed
That's
to, wow,
exactly right.
figure
That's
it out.
exactly right. How many times do you want to give away your power? And I think it's hard in the moment to see it that way. I really do. And I understand it. And I also think it's hard in the moment to feel grateful for it. You
Yeah.
can't feel grateful for it in the moment. But maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, you can look back and feel grateful for the person you've become, which is in part due to what you went through, due to how this person treated you, due to all of your life experiences, good and bad. I was married for 22 years before I got divorced. It was not a great marriage at any time, honestly, and I stayed for 22 years. And it was hard and it was awful, and the divorce was terrible, and I felt terrible. But I don't feel regret for either. I don't feel regret for having married, for having stayed in the marriage. I don't feel regret for leaving. I feel like this is what brought me to who I am. So now, does that mean that I wasn't going through all of the hardship and difficulty and feeling angry and hurt and frustrated during it? Of course not. I felt all of those things. But it's all of these life experiences make us who we are.
Yeah, 100%. We're going to take a quick sponsor break. And when we get back, I want to talk about, once you catch yourself, what are some of the other things to keep in mind to then make that a productive conversation? So we've been triggered. We've taken a pause. We've taken a look at our triggers. and maybe regulated ourselves enough to be able to engage in the conversation. What are some of the things that one wants to keep in mind, knowing that it's a triggering conversation, whatever came up, to make it productive?
So I think partly what you're saying, recognize this is a triggering conversation. This person knows me really well, and we have been doing this dance for X number of years, and he or she knows how to trigger me. I know how to trigger them. Like, we are off to the races. So expect to be taken off guard, right? Often that's like, oh my God, I didn't know what to say because I was so off guard by the thing that they said. Well, that's going to happen, right? That's where the little note card comes in sometimes. That's helpful. And I think one thing to really keep in mind, almost like a mantra for yourself, is address the behavior and not the content if they are on the attack. If they are talking to you in a way that's disrespectful or attacking, don't get caught up in the content. Say, I am really happy to have this conversation with you. Maybe you don't want to say happy. I'm willing to talk about this, but I'm not willing to be attacked. I'm not willing to be spoken to like that. And they may say, I'm not speaking to you in any way. Or I'm hearing that as attacking. And if you want to calm down, we can talk about this. But if you can't calm down, then we'll talk about it another time. Do you see how even like they're saying whatever they're saying and I'm not addressing it. I'm just saying this is not a conducive atmosphere for this conversation. If you have to hang up the phone, you hang up the phone. You say, you warn them, really aren't calm right now. If you can't calm down, I'm going to hang up the phone. Okay, I'm hanging up now. We can talk about this later. And then you hang up. You don't
Oh my
slam the
God,
phone down and
I must have done that. My ex-husband is painfully verbose. And I would be like, I'm hanging up. I'm hanging up. I really don't want to hang up on you, but I have an appointment. And then I'd finally, and I must have hung up on this man like 100 times. And
right.
he'd call back and he'd be like, hey, the next
No
time.
problem.
But it's a boundary too, to be able to say, but I want to get back to that other part, which I think is so important because my audience tends to be on the dance floor doing the deflect and defend dance, right? So they deflect and they attack or they project. And my client, and when I've met with even a whole group of people to say, I want you to think about what you can do other than defend yourself. And most of the time they're like, I've got nothing. I have no idea. And you just nailed it. And so if you find yourself, for those tuning in, if you find yourself constantly engaged in a conversation where somehow there you are on the defense again. No, that's not what happened. That's not what I did. That's this tactic that Deborah is talking about of addressing the behavior instead of the content is absolutely brilliant and immediately puts you back on solid ground and gives you your power back. And so I want to just talk about it a little bit more. Like the defend is so natural, right? Because you've been doing it for years, probably. It's like, no, 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 that's not what I meant. No, that's not what happened. Like, no, 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 no. Like you're on your heels.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it really triggers our sense of justice. This isn't fair. They're not, and not feeling seen. They don't understand. I just need to explain. If I just explain, then they'll understand and then they'll see it my way. And then everything will be unicorns and rainbows. No, that's because then he'll just change the subject because you're not actually arguing about whatever the content is. So if you notice yourself feeling, this is where it goes back to tuning in. Do I feel like I want to defend myself? Take a breath, give yourself some space again between that feeling of what they've just said, of what it's triggered in you, and before you respond. And then the mantra of address the behavior, not the content. I don't want to defend myself. I don't have to defend myself. I don't need him to understand because he's not going to understand.
And so the two-step dance that Deborah just described is, maybe it's more than two steps. So you're tuning into how you're feeling, you're being triggered. And then if you're actually thinking about, what do I want to get out of this conversation? And so it's keeping it in the eye. So you're tuning it in, you're I'm feeling attacked. I'm asking you to kind of calm down. I'll have to hang up otherwise. And then all of this is putting you in control of the conversation. Like you're in control of you,
That's right.
not managing the conversation, but you're in control of you. And then that piece of what do I want to get out of this conversation?
And you can say, you sound really upset. So I'm not upset. You're speaking in a way that feels attacking to me. Let's table this until a little later. You know, when you feel calmer, if you're not upset now, then for when you feel calmer. Or if he admits that he's, or she admits that she's upset, then yeah, let's talk about this a little bit later when you're not feeling so upset and we can have a calm conversation. I really want that. I really want us to be able to have a calm conversation.
And for those of you who are in these high conflict situations, and I know it's so many of you, there may be nothing, this is not, I don't want you to step on to that slippery slope of codependence. You're not trying to control them. You're taking care of you. You're keeping it in the eye. You're noticing how you're triggered. You have an idea of how you'd like the conversation to go. You're staying away from you, but you're not trying to control them. And so I do want to talk about little Billy and what we're going to do with travel soccer. This isn't the right time. And these are baby boundaries for you to say it's not a good time because tempers are running high. It doesn't matter if they agree with you or not, and you don't have to get your point across right then and there. It's like, we'll table this until later. You're in
That's
full
right. And I think that a lot of it is you're sending yourself a signal. You're sending your own brain a signal.
control.
That's why you say these things aloud. And that is part of taking back your power. It's not power over them. It's the
Power.
power for yourself and the power to take a step that you need to take. You really can't control how they're going to react, what they're going to think, if it's going to have the effect that you want. It may not. There's certainly a better chance of having the effect that you want if you're not going down the road of the habitual screaming and yelling and engaging in defensiveness and all of that. There's a better chance, but that can't be, the reason has to be for your own health and for your own empowerment and your own ability to move forward.
I do that, and he comes back at me, guns blazing.
Yeah, and that's
There
when
you
you
go
go,
again. You're so sensitive. You're always saying, you're always running away. You're such a bad co-parent. You won't even talk to me, blah, blah, blah.
well, I think that then it goes back to all of these other strategies of like, you sound upset. I don't really like that you're insulting me right now and criticizing me. And so if we can't have a calm and civil conversation, and right now, we're gonna have to do it later. Some of the stuff, I think we have to remember, sometimes the things they say as a criticism, we're so used to hearing the criticisms that the things that they say are not, they say it critically, but they're not necessarily bad. So one of the things that was in that litany of insults was, you're so sensitive. I am sensitive. Yeah, I am sensitive. You can own it. You can do,
I
there's
love that.
nothing more disarming. Yeah, I'm sensitive.
Yep.
Why is blah, blah, blah so important to you? You're right. That is really important to me. If the reaction is always to say no and argue to everything that they say, that's what they're expecting. That's what they're trying to get you to go there. So you can own the things you can own with love for yourself, and the things that you can't, you call out the behavior. Like that really, it sounds like you're criticizing me. And that's not really that helpful for this conversation. Think that we can have this conversation without you getting critical and attacking, or should we wait till later?
Beautiful.
And also, that's the question. Then you're putting it in, can you do this?
Yeah.
That's also you and your power, giving them the choice. And then if they say, no, no, I can do it, I can do it. And then they don't, you say, it sounds like this is not working right now, and you're still being very critical. So let's talk about this another time. Or let's talk about this in email.
Yeah. And so I'm going to just ask for all of my clients who have been in these kind of berating, belittling relationships. Part of it is what you and I are talking about. I certainly couldn't do this in the early stages of my divorce. My confidence was in the gutter. There
Yeah.
was no confidence. I was
Mm-hmm.
uncertain, I was scared, I was insecure, I had no voice. And so I would remember I felt like my bones were shaking. I was so afraid going up against him. And now I look back and I was like, well, what was I afraid of? He always did the same thing over and over again. He didn't hands on me. His words, he had a potty mouth and he was
It's scary. It's violent in itself, right?
so for the people who are like, I don't even know, I don't know how to get there. I don't know how
Right.
to stand in my power because I'm so much more likely to enable, to acquiesce, to be quiet, to shrink back, because that's what I've done. And when you've done something so often, it's like you have this mental, physical muscle memory. It's like, this is how I stay safe because this is how I stayed safe. I just had someone say, well, that's how I stayed safe with my angry dad and my alcoholic mom.
That's
And
right.
so I always say your little kid is driving the bus.
Oh, I always say that too. That's so funny. And they're not old enough to drive. That's what
Exactly.
I
Very
usually
dangerous,
say.
very dangerous. So let's talk a little bit about that because I think that's the underneath of the skill we're talking about.
Yeah. I want to say first that you're not going to listen to this podcast and all of a sudden be able to like do all of these things that we're talking about. It's like you have to take baby steps and you have to celebrate each step. And the thing that I also tell my clients all the time is like, you first need to start becoming aware of your pattern. Is your pattern that I become a little girl, that the little girl in me starts to drive the bus, that to even see that as a separate part, right? That, okay, I have this part of me that's like myself with a capital S, that I'm really grounded and compassionate toward myself and toward others. And I'm curious, right? All those things. And then there's a part of me that's really scared and really feeling protective and has been influenced by all kinds of things, like the way my dad treated me or the way my mom treated me or whatever it was. And to understand that child needed comforting at that time that she or he didn't get.
Yeah.
How can we take that grounded part of ourselves to the child part and give that comfort, that reassurance, that love now?
Yeah. And
Right?
actually, I would argue that in many cases, we've been as critical of that little inner child
Oh,
as our parents were, right? Because it's like, what the hell is my problem? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just?
well,
It's almost
again, all those questions that aren't really questions.
an
They're
accusation.
they're accusations. And I think that we do. I think first of all, we merge with that part in that moment, right? And so now we are that part. But really that's just a historical part of us, right? That kind of lives inside of us.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, just notice. Oh, and the thing is when we push that part away and we don't want that part, we want to stifle that part, kind of goes rogue and also gets louder.
Yeah.
So,
Well put.
yeah. Yeah. So it's like, all right, they want to be heard. Let me sit down and have a little chat with that part and see,
Yeah. I
you
think
know.
that for all of the love, I know for me, for all of the love I didn't get, I learned many years ago that I needed to reparent myself, that I had to give myself, and I used to call myself an effing idiot. That was like my big thing.
Hmm.
And now it just horrifies me. But it took me a long time to get out of that habit and then to actually pay attention so that I could integrate my younger self who was traumatized and driving the bus with my older self. And it sometimes sounded like it makes sense that you're scared and you're upset. And I haven't always been there for you. And I'm really sorry. And I love you, but I'm a grown up now and I've got this. I've got us. We're okay.
Right.
We're safe. Like literally the same way I would have talked to my 5, 6 year old daughter.
And I'm with you. We're going to do this together. I'm not leaving you by yourself.
And
I'll be
people
with
think
you
that's
holding your hand.
crazy, but it's actually, there is a younger part of us who I used to say that my inner child was like the kitten. It's like, I'm not coming out from behind the couch because you've been yelling and putting me down for years.
Yeah.
I'm not coming out. And so I really had to go through a whole process to almost make myself safe enough to integrate my younger child with my.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yes, I love that
Yeah.
analogy. The
Yeah.
kitten coming out from under the couch. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm aware that this feels like a lot, right? This could feel like a lot to anybody listening. Oh my God, and I don't have time for this. And I have to be able to do this. And so I just want to go back to the idea of celebrating every step. That means when you hang up the phone and you realize, oh, I just went down to my habitual place, and okay, celebrate the fact that you're aware, that you realize, right? Oh, think about, all right, how do I want to do that next time? And then next time, see what happens. And if you're able to take another step in that direction, then you celebrate that. And if you get off the phone and you comfort your inner child and you realize whatever that means to you, whatever way you can accommodate that information, then celebrate that. This It's one tiny step at a time. We have our whole lives to evolve into the people we want to be. And you're dealing with this is the most difficult time to communicate when you are so triggered.
Yeah.
So give yourself some grace.
Yeah. And use every rub just to notice and grow. And then the trigger becomes the gift. Every time I'm triggered, I'm given a gift because I get to heal and refine myself.
That's right.
And
if you can see it that way in the moment.
yeah. And I want to plant the seed that over time you can, because as soon as you start seeing yourself improve. And what was shocking to me, Deborah, was I had one situation where my ex-husband called my monthly child support, my monthly extortion check. And he chose to give it to me about 4 times a year. And I would get so angry and so freaked out and so scared that I couldn't take care of the kids. But over the course of time, I realized he's triggering a scarcity mentality that was planted in me by my mom and dad's depression era mentality. He didn't do it. He's just poking at it. And what if I use every poke of his to regulate myself and start noticing how I see money and what my money fears are? And so I started responding differently to him. Like, even if you could just give me $250, like anything you could give me, I'd so appreciate. And then he started saying, I'm going to try and get it all to you, but thank you so much. And I'm not going to say we don't have a great relationship. We never did. But the example of this was, as I changed my energy and my response, I wasn't trying to change his dance, but the steps of his dance changed too. It just made it a little bit easier at times to be like, you're human, I'm human. Let's just do this the best we can together. And audience, that was sporadic, occasional, and it wasn't long lasting. And still, it was so lovely in the moments that we could do that. And so I really encourage you to look for when that can happen. So I'm 19 years post-divorce. He's as angry and dysregulated as he was all those years ago. But the moments were still the moments, and they were good. And it also helped me to get a glimpse of the man I fell in love with, when he could show up kind, and he could show up kind only because I was leading it and I was showing up kind. So I think that there's so much value in doing this practice. And then we take it away from the ex, and it's like, you may have snarky teenagers, you may have adult children who want to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing,
or parents who are still alive and
got a short fuse or whatever. And so once we learn this, we get to use.
And I just want to be clear that it doesn't mean you're condoning the behavior. You're not condoning the behavior of not paying your child support when you're supposed to. But the self-righteousness is the thing that really gets us into trouble.
Yes.
This is what's happening. And it gets in the way of our own growth. We could stay self-righteous. Who's going to argue with you? But it's not actually helpful for us.
I've yet to meet somebody, and I used to shame and blame him, but it's like, I've yet to meet somebody who reacts positively to being blamed and shamed. It's like, oh, thank you so much. Let me be kind to you now. It doesn't usually happen that way.
Thank you so much for this growth opportunity. Yeah.
So Deborah, this is great. I want to ask if you have any last tips, and then I want you to share with our audience how they can find you. And I know you have a gift for us.
Sure. Yeah. I'll say I think that we've pretty much covered everything. I would say just remember, you're wanting to slow down the process and stay with yourself. Like, those are the really important things. And remember what your goal is. Keep in mind, what are you going for? Have a strategy. So all of that. Yeah. And yes, and I'm happy to offer anybody a free 45-minute consult
Okay.
if they're interested. That's a pretty robust amount of time, and I do that because I want people to feel like even if they don't continue on to work with me, that they're getting something out of it, that they are finding some value, and that it's enough time for us to get to know each other a little bit and to understand your particular situation. So that is my gift.
Beautiful. So you can find a link in the show notes on your website.
Is photosynthesiscoaching.com.
And that too is in the show notes. And grab that. That's a really generous and kind gift if this has resonated with you. And Deborah, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a lovely and enlightening conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, me too. And Deborah and I are going to now have a coffee date now that we realize we're neighbors.
That we live so close to one another. So good.
So that's great. And until next time, you'll hear from me real soon. You take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.